Greetings from Tempo Comics. Once again, I'm Simon, the co-creator of Bad Sushi Cannon. Wanted to show you again one of our character bios here. This time we're going to go ahead and go with Eddy Wong, who is the basically the repo man in space. He's the guy that unlocks the doors. He's got the right equipment, which is usually a baseball bat or a golf club. He isn't very refined, and that's kind of what drives Eddy. Eddy is kind of a listless guy in the cosmos. He's usually half sober, at least. I would never say that he's completely not inebriated. It's kind of a way of life for him to just go with the flow, and that flow is usually from a tap somewhere, some kind of Pilsner, I'm sure. Really based his look, I don't know exactly how to describe it. I guess just like a weird, scuzzy guy. But later on, his artwork kind of changes just a little bit. Kind of looks a little bit more like the line work of gorillas. Sometimes his eyes are dots. They've always been little dots. So it looks very cartoonish. I would say though, like his personality-wise and the way he talks, to the language, is very much like a Johnny Rotten, Sid Vicious, punky kind of wannabe punky guy in space, basically. Spiky hair, ratty clothes, doesn't really care about anything or anybody. At least it doesn't seem that way. And he's constantly, like I said, put himself into a bad situation where he's just barely able to function. Being that as it is, if you're ever in a scrape, you would probably want Eddy with you because, he's dumb enough to be fearless, but he also knows when there's a bad idea afoot. So what's driving the story along with Eddy in this one, and we've already discussed that Fang is he's kind of the liar, he's a manipulator. Eddy is the wingman, he's the navigator. So Eddy has to be complacent with the manipulation from the captain. So even though it's the captain who says, let's go through this area here, it's actually Eddy who's put it into his head like, that's a good idea. Let's go through pirate-infested deep space to get to this thing that Eddy thinks is this wonderful treasure, this great new job that he's being put to, and he doesn't know it's all about sea cows. So he's been lied to too a few too many times. I'll get to some artwork that I think best describes how Eddy. There we go. This is Eddy Wong in his natural habitat. Some bunny slippers, a Arthur Dent style bathrobe. Just kind of listing around through life, talking to some unknown female thing on the phone there. Can never be too sure exactly what he's talking to her, what he's doing at any moment. So Eddy too is a victim of Sam's interesting way of solving problems or communication, which is anger and cartoonish violence. It's never stark, realistic violence. Toaster to the head usually would probably hurt somebody pretty good, but it's it's almost Looney Tunes styles of whacking somebody in the head. Like I said, his artwork kind of changes slowly over time. His eyes become more like dots, little surprise dots. He always kind of looks like that. I think it kind of adds to the look of that he's always got something wrong with him. Whatever he's on, whatever he's eating or drinking, is not good for business. Not at all. These are just some scenes where they're talking about Fang lying to them yet again. His wardrobe, unlike Fang, he doesn't really have a lot of vanity, but he does have a cherished and prized beer hat, which makes an appearance in just about every comic. It's like his, I don't know. It's like his Linus's security blanket. Linus has the blue blanket, and Eddy Wong has his beer hat full of something. something in there. So again, like the eyes are complete dots now. And I usually draw him with his eyes half closed because there is, springs to mind, there's an interview with Sid Vicious back in the 70s, and for whatever reason, he can't open his eyes. They're like halfway closed. He's on something. But he just looks like a comedy cartoon of a human being, and that's kind of a go for with Eddy. And then when his eyes are opened, he's like a little mole rat person or something. He just can't, he can't undilate his eyeballs. Something ain't right with that boy. He's a lot of fun to draw. Like I said, character driving though, he's more like a lukewarm puddle of water. If Fang is like the burning furnace of the story, and then Sam is like this cold, icy fist of whatever, Eddy's just kind of there in between. And he makes for good fodder and conversation. And oftentimes he's kind of the pitfall. He's the funny thing that happens. I'll show you here, where he's about to save the day. Here he comes down the hill. That's Eddy's entrance into the robot world. There's his feet, and then he springs up with his beer hat, talking about how safety matters. You know, helmets, beer helmet, still a helmet. It's gonna be okay. I'll show you some of the later artwork so you can see how it really jumps. I would say that Eddy's streamlined look now is a little bit different. It's not radically different. I think that Fang's look is a little bit more radically changed, I'd say. I think that Eddy's just a little bit more well drawn now. His proportions are a little bit better. I don't mean to say like I'm trying to emulate the look of those Gorillaz videos, or like there's 2D or whatever, but I can kind of see that people have pointed out that there's that weird dots in the eyes. But also, like, he's got a very, very fun face to draw. The beer hat is ever present. It's like his thing to do. His go-to wardrobe is the beer hat. I kind of set him aside as, you'll know where Eddy is because that's his hat. Another thing too is that we kind of skipped over, we were grayscaling a lot for the first few issues. And right around this issue, we stopped doing grayscale as much. And so the lines became bolder. And Eddy actually looks a little bit better with just the black and white bolder lines like that. Some of the grayscale is awesome, but it was also very strange to see him. It almost looked like eyeshadow on him sometimes. With the hat, we tried to shade him with the hat. Oh, there's nobody on that page. Wrong page. There he is. Yeah, it's one of the funnest characters to draw, I think. Getting the jaw line right and the weird cheekbones and his sideburn. That's his other, the weird, I don't know what those are, those mutton chop sideburn things. I've seen them before on people trying to be really weird with their hairstyles, so it's kind of stuck on him for a while. How strange he is. But neat stuff. And I'll show you one last drawing, which is particularly proud of. I've drawn of him. Of course, it's in one of the final panels here. It's just that when you can start to three-dimensionally see your 2D characters, getting that 3/4 angle of the face is good, but from behind, if you can draw their ear right and their cheekbone, you can still kind of see that, oh, that's Eddy there on the top panel looking into the ATM over there. And I feel like I've done pretty good. He's always got a thing with hats. It's weird because I just now realized I've got a thing with hats. If it's a beer hat or this Fuzzy Deer Hunter. The Fuzzy Deer Hunter hat is kind of rip-off from Red Dwarf. That's Lister's hat too. And on this page, actually, there's a couple Red Dwarf call-outs on this very page. There's a Crichton walking by, and there's a guy with a red dwarf jacket halfway on the bottom of the panel. It's one of my favorite things ever, red dwarf, so I put it in there whenever I can. But that's Eddy Wong, listless, kind of go with the flow guy. Doesn't cause trouble, but he's okay enough to be in it too. And whenever he gets around to being sober, I'm sure one day in the comic, he'll have something very brilliant to say, very poignant, almost Shakespearean in quality. But until then, that's Eddy from Bad Sushi Cannon. Hope you enjoy reading it. Go ahead and check out our Indiegogo campaign, Bad Sushi Cannon graphic novel, Indiegogo.com. And you can score yourself all these comics and more. There's actually 2 more issues not shown here. 170 pages of content, lots of Eddy Wong and Fang and Sam, a whole lot of other stuff. If you like sci-fi comedy, go ahead and check us out. Also follow us on our YouTube page at Typo Comics, and on our Facebook we have the Typo Comics Collective. So I hope you see you there. Thanks.